this review and kind of reaction to UFC 274 is really only going to focus on two fights. Maybe I'll do something on Rose and Carla Esparza later on, but this is really only going to focus on the two lightweight fights between Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson, and then Charles Oliveira's ridiculous sub over Justin Gaethje. We'll deal with the Chandler one first because it was so incredible. Look, I feel bad for Tony Ferguson. The guy had an unbelievable run in the UFC, 12 straight wins, I believe. Chandler's just a different thing. Tony hurt him definitely twice with counters in the first round of the stand-up. In the first 2 minutes and like 20 seconds, Tony was winning the stand-up. That should be obvious. And then Chandler decided to get the takedown and change the dynamic of the first round. Probably won the first round. Two of his elbows from on top were vicious. Hurt Tony. Of course, Tony gets up at the end of the first round, smiles, and taps Chandler on the butt, and then gets caught with the Anderson Silva type front kick like 20 seconds into the round or something like that. It was a little different than the front kick that Silva landed on Vitor, and even the one that Machida landed on Randy Couture up in Canada. It was a little different. It was like Tony was moving to his right, which would be Chandler's left, and Chandler brought it kind of across from right to left at an angle, and Tony didn't see it. So, it's like they say, the strikes that knock you out or hurt you really badly are the ones you don't see, and obviously Tony went out cold. Chandler's a monster. Absolute monster. And what does that say about some of these guys that have beaten him? Obviously Charles Oliveira being the main one, and then Justin Gaethje beats him by decision. Of course, back in Bellator, Patricio Pitbull Ferreira had beaten him as well. But we're talking about here recently, this current iteration of Michael Chandler is a monster. Hopefully Tony's okay. He certainly did not look okay as they were making the announcement for the fight. I'm so glad they did not interview Tony. I'd like to see him move off fighting altogether at this point. And if he can't, at least don't put him in there with those elite guys. Him saying something bad about the UFC this past week, maybe that could be a good thing, and he gets released or doesn't get a fight for a while. Great run by Tony Ferguson. Took advantage of his body style, long limbs, and submission ability, and then his cardio to get to the top of the elite level of UFC lightweight fighters. Unfortunately, never fought Khabib, which would have been interesting, but at this point, you'd like to see him be done, or at least I would. Let's move on to the main event. I think Charles Oliveira is an absolute anomaly. He sticks out. He's a different style, and that may sound silly. He's a submission guy, a Muay Thai striker. He's different because something happened in that fight that is crazy, that makes no sense. Gaethje dropped him twice in the first round. Now, I did think he landed an early kick. I believe it was a kick against Gaethje that hurt him. Oliveira just walks through strikes. Okay, there's guys who do that. They have a tremendous cardio, tremendous chin, and they walk through strikes. They come forward. Okay, that's fine. Oliveira did that tonight after Gaethje knocked him down the second time. About like 20 seconds after Gaethje knocked him down the second time. I believe that one was a right counter, but I could be wrong. Oliveira gets up. Of course, Gaethje let him get up. Oliveira gets up and comes forward. Who does that? Who does that after getting knocked down twice? They're getting their ass whipped at that point, essentially, getting outstruck. And there was a moment there where Gaethje realized, oh my gosh, I can't keep this guy off of me. And I thought the fight changed then. I was talking to a couple of guys in the Discord while watching the fight, and one of us even mentioned it. And I said, look, this fight just changed. Gaethje looks different. He looks like he's like, oh shit, I really can't keep this guy off of me. And look, Oliveira was hurt bad twice. Gaethje landed those two. One of them was a right, one of them was a left to knock him down. Unbelievable ending with Oliveira, like I said, walking him down, landing that counter right hand. It was an unsettled situation, kind of like I had alluded to in a preview video. And then once he got Gaethje in that top triangle, which is crazy in and of itself, it almost looked like when Toby Amada choked out Masvidal in Bellator in like 2009, which was like an inverted reverse, or some say reverse, triangle, but it was standing. But we all knew it was over. We all knew it was over at that point. Gaethje was hurt. Oliveira had the advantage in the grappling. Cool transition to the back, and had the rear naked instantly. Oliveira is one of the most interesting champions because of his story and the path he took to be the champion. He's now a finished product, a fully evolved, dangerous fighter. And the scariest thing about him isn't his striking or his submissions. I think it's his cardio, and which allows him to recover quickly. I said it in the preview video that I talked about. It reminds me of Nick Diaz, Colby Covington, Some of those guys, Tony Ferguson during his prime, who could take unbelievable shots and just walk right through it. And who the hell takes shots from Gaethje like this and survives? Now, granted, I say that Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier clearly took shots from him, and they were able to finish him as well. So it seemed like to me his strategy was to take his head low and off the center line to the right and come up with a right hook. Seemed like he was trying to take, like I said, take his head off the center line, avoid a knee or something from Oliveira, and come up with a right hook, and it worked. He landed it twice. He cut Oliveira, but nothing stops the guy. Nothing. One other interesting note that I'd like to make about the fight, and one thing Oliveira did that's strategic and not just walk through strikes, was how he handled low kicks. Now I think he did check one of them, if I remember right, but generally his answer to the Gaethje low kick puzzle was to just lift his left leg out of the way and let Gaethje's right leg swing past and get Gaethje essentially a little off balance. Now you can't do that against everyone, but you can against Justin Gaethje. Why? Well, there's no threat of a takedown. Gaethje doesn't use takedowns for two reasons. Now there was two fights I remember he did. Luis Palomino in World Series of Fighting during an absolute war. Years ago, they fought each other back-to-back twice, and he did attempt at least one takedown on both of those fights. But another reason that Gaethje didn't attempt a takedown tonight is because he's going against the greatest submission artist in UFC history, Charles Oliveira. Now, there's other guys who maybe are more accomplished grapplers. Damian Maia comes to mind, first of all. But Oliveira is like, it's so weird, the dynamic. On the feet, he's like, and I'm old, so these references are mine, and you may not get them. He's like Jason or Freddy Krueger. He just keeps coming. He just keeps coming forward. You can't stop him. And then he's going to land strikes because he comes forward and his striking is incredibly improved. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to cover something again that I talked about in the preview video if you watched it. I think Oliveira has just finished off the greatest 5-fight run in UFC lightweight history. I do. Starting, and I'll recap them briefly. Now, if he goes and he beats Islam Makhachev, and this would now be his 6th incredible win in a row, I think it would be I think he's won 10 fights in a row at this point, maybe 11. I'm just talking about these last 5 fights. I think they're the greatest 5 wins in a row in UFC lightweight history. Starting in March of 2020, I think the weekend the pandemic kind of started, or maybe the weekend before, he subbed Kevin Lee in round 3. Kevin Lee, incredible athlete, great wrestler, a lot of power, gasses out after a round and a half or two, and Oliveira subbed him. Then he beats Tony Ferguson in December of 2020, before this 3-fight rampage that he's on against Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, and now Gaethje, with the craziest formula ever. Get floored, in some cases almost get finished, and then get back up to hurt the other guy with strikes, and then finish him with a sub. In comparison to some of the other wins in this run, this one kind of looked easy. I mean, as easy it can be to get hit by Justin Gaethje and drop twice in the first 90 seconds or 100 seconds. Let's compare it to Khabib's best 5-fight run, his best 5 wins in a row, which is his last 5 fights. All right, he fought about once a year basically. 2017, there was a dominant decision against Edson Barbosa. Absolutely dominated him. And then over a year later, I think there was a lot of canceled fights there with Ferguson for various reasons. There was a one-sided decision against Al Iaquinta in New York that I think won him the UFC title. There's the 4th round submission over Conor to defend the title that he had just won. So you got 3 great wins in a row. Edson Barbosa, Al Iaquinta, who stepped in on short notice, and then Conor. Then the sub wins against Poirier and Gaethje. They're separated by, I think, a little over a year. So I hate to break it to you, at least for me, I think Charles Oliveira's 5 wins in a row are more impressive. Khabib's took about 34 months to accomplish. 34 months, I think. And then he was done for good reasons. He had promised his family he would be done. So nothing wrong with that. But Charles Oliveira's won these 5 fights in a little over 2 years, about 24 months. 25 months, maybe, in the middle of a pandemic, mind you. So you got logistical and health concerns to navigate for Charles and everyone who's fighting. Just in terms of just scheduling and finding the fight. Historic run. Level of competition doesn't get any higher. Oliveira's level of competition in those 5 fights is higher than Khabib's level of competition in his 5 fights. There's just no question. He's faced guys with power advantages over him, including tonight, wrestling advantages over him, just pure wrestling, Chandler, Lee, and even Gaethje would have more ability to take him down than Oliveira would have the ability to take them down. He's an absolute anomaly, and someone who can be held up as an example that you're not a finished product when you're 26. You know, if it was other sports and I was talking about football, I'd be talking about don't judge quarterbacks when they're 23. They're not finished products. Not even finished products when they're 25. At some point, Charles Oliveira is 10-8 in the UFC. Two things improved drastically, one of which is amazing and rare, and the other one I think is more important. His striking improved dramatically. I think he's with Shoot to Box, I believe. And so that's rare for someone to improve their striking at such a high level, you know, at age 20, from age 27 to 32, which I think he is now. But to me, the one that's more important is the cardio. The cardio changes everything. He gets hit, he gets dropped, he recovers. He recovers. Demetrius Johnson was another one that I should have mentioned about cardio. Of course, he's, you know, those guys at the really lighter weights, it's kind of easier for them to have great cardio. But Colby Covington, Ferguson, the two Diazes, the prime Diazes, those are guys that have amazing chins. And Oliveira's chin ranks right up there. He gets dropped, but he recovers quick. Gaethje hurt him, wouldn't follow him to the ground. Tactically, you think that's a great decision. Looking back at it in hindsight, obviously it was not. If they had it to do over again, he'd follow him to the ground and go for the finish. But, you know, a lot of times looking at things in hindsight, it's just dumb. It's a waste of time. You cannot let Charles Oliveira get up and go Jason Voorhees on you. You can't. How does Islam Makhachev beat him? I don't think he does. I don't. His takedowns are generally like Khabib's. They're going to occur near the fence with people who are trying to avoid the grappling situations, with people who are scared of being taken down, with strikers who are trying to move laterally, trying to create space to land strikes and get away from them. Charles Oliveira is not going to end up back against the cage against Islam Makhachev. He's not. A, he doesn't care about being taken down. B, he marches forward. Doesn't care if he gets hit. I know Islam has good striking. Oliveira's grappling is another level. And he's going to pressure. That the interactions, the engagements, either striking or grappling, between Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev are going to occur somewhere near the middle of the cage. He's not going to end up back against the cage. Not this current iteration of Charles Oliveira. Oliveira makes a choice. He's going to come forward. It's immediate. It's direct. He's not moving side to side. He's coming directly at you. He wants to force the interaction to occur as fast as possible. Whereas the guys who are strikers that want to sprawl and brawl, they're trying, with Khabib and Islam Makhachev, they're trying to avoid the interaction as long as possible. They don't want to have to sprawl at all. So they want to create space to minimize the chance of that happening. Oliveira doesn't care. And when it goes to the ground, he's not a black belt in BJJ. He's not. He's Thanos. Like, it doesn't even make sense how good his jiu-jitsu is. He's something we've never seen before. He doesn't worry about going up the positional ladder and eventually, you know, Damian Maia would do that. Damian Maia would slowly work up the positional ladder and constantly give people two choices, both of which were bad. Oliveira's different. He doesn't give you any choice at all. But in the end, I don't even think it's his skill, cardio, whatever. I think it's his will. Charles Oliveira is driven. And what happened this weekend with the weigh-in mix-up, I don't think was any fault of his own. And he went out there and he had to win. Not he wanted to win, not he needed to win. Charles Oliveira had to win. There was no choice in his mind. He's willing to walk through the fire, take whatever you have to offer, and give it back and finish you. And that's why, right now, I think Charles Oliveira is one of one. Let me know what you guys think of my breakdown, my thoughts about the fight, what you thought about the fights in general. I do keep notes and try to make, you know, observations during the fight on a computer so that I have some idea of the flow of the fights. These two fights that I covered are quite easy to have commentary on. Chandler's unbelievable KO of Tony Ferguson, and then Charles Oliveira following his repeated pattern, you know, except doing it a little bit quicker this time in his submission over Justin Gaethje.